Hello, today is July 8th, 2009. We're meeting today with Mr. David Landers at his home in Loveland, Colorado. My name is Brad Hoops. I'm the interviewer for the Northern Colorado Veterans History Project. Welcome, David, and thanks for participating today.
Thank you for letting me participate. I
Very
appreciate
good.
that.
Let's start out, if we could. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your date of birth, where you were born, a little bit about your family.
Okay, I was born December 30th, 1922 in Norfolk, Nebraska, and moved within 6 months to northeast Wyoming, where my dad had a ranch, and we lived there until I was probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 years old, or 9, 10, somewhere in that neighborhood. And Dad had lost the cattle during the Depression, so we had to move to town, which I knew nothing about at that age. I didn't know what was going on. But we moved and I started school there in Sundance, Wyoming, which is a town at that time of roughly between 100 and 200 people. Very small place. And entered school there and stayed there and graduated in 1941 in high school. Then went to University of Wyoming and started there at the fall of 41. And that's where I met my future wife at the same time.
We'll talk about that. We'll have to get that story down for sure. So you started the fall of 41.
Yeah.
Pearl was bombed December of 41.
December 41.
You remember where you were and what you were thinking when you'd heard that that had
Well, I
happened?
know I was living in the men's dorm, and we heard it that morning on the radio. And of course, I had a 7 o'clock class, so went to class. We started down the sidewalk. Remember, we went to some other friends. We talked about it, but didn't probably really know what to talk about. It just had happened. That's what so we had to go to class. And I don't know exactly when I decided to join the Air Corps. I didn't want to be drafted. My brother was drafted right about the same time, but he went in the Army. And so I don't know exactly when, probably sometime during 42, I went and talked to them. They said, well, we defer you until you graduate. Well, then December 42, I got a letter saying you go on active duty in February of 43.
So much for finishing school, huh?
I did.
So you chose to enlist in the Air Corps?
Yeah.
Any reason why you chose that over the other service branches?
No, other than I wanted to fly.
Oh, really? Yeah. Had you ever flown prior to that?
No.
Is that? Oh, wow. Well,
I think I got to go up once in a, folks didn't want me to, a little plane came there in Sundance. And I think I somehow skipped out from school or skipped off from somewhere. You go up for a penny a pound or something like that. So I took a ride. I can't remember what it was like, but I'm pretty sure I did. That's the only time, but I like flying.
yeah, yeah.
So I went there.
So you were inducted, you said February of 43?
Yeah.
How soon after that did you ship off?
Well, I had lots of training. Well, I don't know what you mean by ship off, so.
But so in February 43, you actually left to go off?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
left
I'm
to
sorry.
go to
Okay.
basic training at Jefferson Barracks, Missouri. Went to university there at Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of schooling. I don't remember all what we had. I guess it's practically starting the school all over again, really. They gave me all kind of classes. So for all of 43, I spent there, or close to it anyway. And then I went to California for some more schooling in Santa Ana, California. And then for some more school there for a little while. And then I went out to Hemet Air Force Base, or I guess it wasn't Air Force Base, little private, and I learned to fly the Ryan PT for Ryan. It was a little BT-22, low wing monoplane, open cockpit, wonderful plane. And I flew that, and I flew BT-6s and AT-6s, more powerful plane at that time. And I got sick. I couldn't take it. I couldn't do the loops or the spins or anything like that. I'd get sick. The instructor said, well, you can't do it. If you get sick, you can't be a fighter pilot or anything else. You can't fly. So I would like to fly, and I said, well, I want to, okay, let me be a B-17 pilot then. So I said, okay, we'll sign you up for that. So then I flew AT-17s there in Cessna, there in Bakersfield. I trained twin-engine plane there. And I don't have any idea when or where they decided to fly B-25s. I have no idea. I was sent to Colorado right here at La Junta for B-25 training there. And I trained here, got my wings in September of '44 as a graduated flying school. Got that, had a 2 weeks furlough, and they sent me to South Carolina for not combat training, but overseas military training, overseas training, I guess it was. So I trained there until, well, I was scheduled to go overseas in December, and something happened to the crew. I don't remember what really happened, but the crew broke up, so I was assigned to a different crew. So that took me until April of '45. So I went overseas in April.
Over to the European theater or Pacific theater?
European Pacific theater.
Okay. Did you guys fly over, or did you take a ship over?
I
Or
flew over.
flew over? How was the routing on that, and how long did it take you?
Well, not very long.
Really? Yeah.
Took a train to Los Angeles. And that was in April. Probably took 2 days to get there, the train, I don't know. And then we flew from there to Hawaii, and then Hawaii to New Guinea, down there. I don't remember stopping anywhere in between. So I don't know. It was a big plane. It wasn't, well, probably C-46 or C-47 or something like that. Might have been a V-54, I don't know. I wasn't interested.
So you didn't fly your actual plane over? Okay.
I flew over.
Let me back up again here to earlier. You know, a lot of people in your generation really didn't travel too far away from home growing up and such. Here you were traveling all over the country, and now you're going over to these exotic locations overseas. How was that for a boy from Sundance, Wyoming, to experience all these new locations, meeting different people from around the country?
I don't know. I didn't seem to really bother me at all.
Yeah.
I was excited to learn I had flown and knew how to fly.
Well,
so
was there much of a transition for you going from civilian life into military life? How was that transition?
well, in the Jefferson Barracks, Missouri, it was quite a transition. And they were rough on you. If you didn't toe the mark all the way through every day, salute or don't smile or I don't. I mean, that was new to me. I didn't know the military would be that rough on somebody. Man, they cracked down on you every day of the week and made you mop the floors every morning, get out of. But we were in barracks. We weren't in the dorm. We were in barracks. So cold that we had to mop the floor and it froze faster than we could mop it. Then you had to get a big, heavy overcoat on to go out there and march in the field.
Yeah, boy.
That was new to me. I mean, it was okay, but I mean, that was.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it. What are we doing all this for?
Yeah,
I
right.
want to fly a plane. I don't want to march down to San Diego, freeze myself.
How was it as far as, did you experience anything in the way of like homesickness in that regard, particularly either from home or we need to talk about that cute gal you met in college, the separation there, was that much of an issue for you? Or?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't remember trying to be homesick. It's from Sundance. I was just not necessarily glad to get away from the place, but it was so small and everything. And the university was so big to me that I don't think I really noticed any homesickness at all any time that I know of.
Okay. So moving ahead, I guess, to your story, you guys land in New Guinea, and is that where you were based out of, or take your story from there, I guess.
Well, for a couple of days I don't think I was in New Guinea more than a week, probably not. We had some that's when I know that the Lord was with me, because we took a flight when a pilot, from a combat pilot, had come down there and there flew a bunch of us. There was probably 20 of us in the plane. I think the plane would hold more than 5, but the whole bunch of us were in there. And I happened to be flying co-pilot, which was unusual. There was plenty of other pilots there. I don't know how I got Maybe I just crowded myself in. I don't know the idea. But anyway, we were flying, they call it a mission. I don't know what, we dropped bombs somewhere in Wewak. There were still Japanese holdouts all over, all the islands it was. And I don't understand why, but that's what we did. And we came back. I was just one of these pilots that liked excitement. So I turned to the pilot, I said, let's do a Chandelle landing.
Which is, can you explain to those of us that know what a Chandelle landing
Chandelle
is?
flight is where a fighter plane comes in real low over the runway and pulls it up sharp and gets into a landing pattern. And bombers don't do that. They just fly a circle around the plane and land. So I asked him if he said, well, let's do a Chandelle. He said, okay, let's try it. So we buzzed the runway real hard and pulled the plane up sharp. And I looked out up the glass window and there was a plane right in front of me.
Oh.
Oh man. I dumped the stick. I hit that stick so freaking hard. It dumped everybody in the plane. Boy, they all flew all over that plane. So that caused a lot of trouble with the personnel in it because they all got banged up and bruised up and everything else. But we went ahead and landed and got out, and mine, everybody was just cussing like mad. Well, what in the world are you doing? Why can't you guys fly an airplane better than that? You know? So we opened the bomb bay doors, and the bombs dropped out. The pins were pulled, but it was low enough to the ground so the bombs didn't hit nose first. They just hit flat.
Oh.
So, I don't know whether the crew that was in there ever really believed us or not. Whether we just were playing around. We could tell them there was a plane right in front of us, but they didn't see it.
Yeah.
So, some of them did. There was quite a few in the front cockpit saw the plane. But the ones in the back, they just got bounced around like rubber balls. Anyway, that was kind of an exciting experience.
You never got in trouble with superiors for that or anything? Or any
Must not
reprimand?
have. At least I was still. Didn't that memory. And then we were transferred up to the Philippines. Up there. And I don't know what mission we started flying there, but I flew some on the China Sea, one flight or so to China, Sea of China, and we were low-level bomber strafers, what we were doing. We had 14 forward-firing 50s on the plane, 3 rockets under each wing, and skip bombs in the bomb bay. So we never flew more than 30, 40, 50 feet off the water.
Really?
That was our route.
So you were primarily attacking shipping?
Shipping.
Okay.
We went after Japanese shipping. Well, how come we went to the China Sea? There must have been some ships there. Never could get information after. They never let you know anything what you did. They just kept that secret. Maybe we didn't hit anything, so they didn't want us to know about it. But anyway, we did that. I flew 12 total missions before the war was over. And they were all, not all of them. We flew one mission down in Borneo. We flew from the Philippines down to Borneo to help the Marines make their landing on Borneo Island, or Balikpapan's where it was called, Balikpapan or Balikpapan. I don't know how you pronounce it. Anyway, so they made that. I never saw the Marines or anything, but we made that flight down there and back, long 12-hour flight. Back and went back to the Philippines. Then we were transferred to Okinawa, and that's where practically most of my flying was out of Okinawa on Sea of Japan against shipping. They were small ships. We didn't go after destroyers or big ships at all, but we go after small cargo ships or some kind of ship like that, radio ships that they were monitoring and everything, going after them. And we come in real low, start about 4 miles out, so they never saw us.
And so there's never any worry, I mean, flying that low as far as
Them
shooting back?
Oh yeah, some of them did. There was probably rifle fire more than it was.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't any ACAC fire and aircraft fire at all, as far as we did now. There may some of them, but none of my, the 405th Bombardment Group never got hit by an aircraft fire. We got hit by a small arm fire quite a bit. That didn't seem to affect us very much anywhere on the line.
Now, when you go out on a mission, these type of missions, would it be a solo mission, or would you be in formation with
There'd
other
be
planes?
three of us.
Three?
Three
Okay.
planes go. Depends on the size of the ship.
Oh, sure.
If it
True.
was big enough for three or four, otherwise it'd be solo. But the others would be solo close to you. They wouldn't be all by you wouldn't be by
Okay.
yourself.
Okay.
There was probably 9 total planes somewhere all over the Sea of Japan there after shipping.
Okay.
And sometimes it was well organized ahead of time so we'd know what ship we were after, but most of the time we just took whatever ship was in front of us. That's about all, because there was plenty of them there.
Okay.
The sea was full of cargo ships and transport ships, and I never knew any transport ship that had people on it. Mostly they were just cargo ships.
Gotcha. Uh-huh.
Oil tankers and things like that that were hauling fuel back and forth or wherever they're going, I don't know.
Well, that must have been a sight to light up one of those things.
Yeah, you never got to really see much. Really.
Oh, okay. It's so fast and
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
We had a camera in the back of our plane, but I never, as far as I know, I never went after any oil tankers really, that I did myself.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly it was just radio ships and cargo ships,
Mhm.
supply. You'd see the supplies on the deck, the big square boxes like
Right,
we
right.
had too. You don't have any idea what was in them, but that wasn't the point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
How big of a crew is in a B-25? How big was your crew? And
well, depending on the mission entirely, we never carried a tail gunner, and we didn't. Sometimes we didn't carry a top turret gunner. The radio man could handle that. So there was time we generally had about 4. We have 2 pilots and a navigator and a radio man, which would operate the guns if necessary. And he'd operate the top turret guns when we were flying in the forward mission. He'd shoot from there, he'd operate that. So there's sometimes there'd be 4 and sometimes 5. And according to the picture I have in there was 6. Well, we never had a tail gunner.
okay.
That was something obsolete, not obsolete, but flying that low, what good's the tail gunner gonna do?
Yeah. Right. Right. So basically, you 2 pilots would operate dropping the bombs and the rockets as well.
Right.
Wow.
And machine guns, yeah, we operate all of that.
Wow. That seems like a lot of going on at very
Just
fast.
a little thumbprint.
Huh.
So all you had to do is press your thumb on the steering wheel, and I call it a steering wheel, it was a half wheel.
Uh-huh,
So,
right. Yeah.
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 You had a thumb press there. One pilot did the bombs, and the other, and the rockets, and the other did the machine gun. So, and I had, the rule or the law, what it was that you had to have 12 missions before you could be a first pilot. I was a first pilot as far as rating is concerned, but they wouldn't wouldn't let me fly as first pilot until after I had 12 missions. And the 12th mission was the war was over.
That was all right. Yeah.
I never did fly first pilot on a mission, which is all right with me, I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're just as busy co-pilot as you are.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine there's a whole lot going on there. I mean, particularly as fast and low as you guys are flying and lining up targets and.
A skip bomb, I was co-pilot, did the skip bombing. So we had to make sure you let those bombs out at the right time so they'd skip into the ship and not into your own plane.
Oh,
There's
jeez.
time you could skip too soon, it'd blow your tail off.
Wow.
It would come up and hit you. So you had to watch that pretty close, that you had to get close enough to the ship before you dropped the bomb, so it'd be sure you'd be out of the way, so that bomb would go into the ship instead of into you.
Was that done by any sort of instrument or just pure instinct and knowing?
Instinct.
Wow.
I don't know, it's called instinct, it's
Yeah.
more by distance. We'd practiced before. We went on practice missions out of the Philippines
Mhm.
and did it there to practice on that target. They had sunken ships or something like that that you put a target onto. See how well you do on that.
Okay.
So we practice all. If you didn't work flying a mission, you were flying a practice mission. Just about every day you flew
Yeah.
something one way or another. I don't think I ever had any days off that I know of.
In regards to not having any days off, do you feel like physically you had, was that giving you, were you getting enough rest and stuff, or was
Oh
it?
yeah, they weren't that hard.
Oh,
Missions
okay.
even the missions weren't too hard. I mean, you were flying for a long time, but we didn't have the problems other planes did with Japanese fighter planes and things like that, where the tension would build up.
Right, okay.
We didn't have that. We didn't have the tension. Our only tension was make sure we didn't get too low to the water.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And weather, was that weather never an issue?
Well, yeah, if it got too bad, they wouldn't let us go out.
Oh, okay, okay.
But most of the time, most of the weather was good over there. There'd be times it'd be pretty bad. We went down to Morty, and we went down there. It was raining all the time down there. So we still flew our mission down there, but they don't, only runways they have there are steel mats. They lay steel mats on top of the sand, so that's what you land on. And the only thing what made that bad, it was slippery.
Hmm.
They'll be wet, and the steel mats would be slippery. You land in, you make sure you better land pretty straight, or you could slide,
Wow.
because there was no way to stop. It wasn't like a paved or a sandy or a hard
Yeah.
gravel driveway, or what do you want to call it, landing strip. They just put steel mats down for you to land on.
Hmm.
And that took a lot of steel mats.
Yeah, I'll bet. I'll bet. So you mentioned earlier you flew with the 405,
Yeah,
and what Air Force was that under?
the 5th Air Force.
5th Air Force.
I could go look it up right now. I meant to this morning. It's the 405th Bomb Group, the 450th Bomb Squadron, or vice versa. I don't know which was which.
Okay, so the 405th Bomb.
Bomb Group, I'll call it, and the 405th Bomb Squadron. But it could have been the other way around. The two numbers could have been. I should have looked that up before you came here.
No, that's fine. We can research that and get that
Nobody
dug
will know it anyway.
Yeah. But well, how were talk a little bit about living conditions as far as what the bases were like. How was it? You know, like I said, here's a boy growing up in Wyoming, and now you're in jungle, hot, humid conditions of the
Yeah,
Pacific. How was the adjustment for that, and how did?
Well, I don't know where you classify officers in the Air Force, but we had very nice living conditions.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Maybe a bamboo hut and stuff like that with bamboo floor and
Uh-huh.
everything, but it was well built. Wasn't anything. Probably had a wood floor, and we actually had a mess hall where you got to go eat. So the food was typical Army or whatever they served. I don't know. I never had any problem with any of it. Or the living conditions either. It was hot.
Yeah.
Better. Now, in Okinawa, we lived in tents there. In the Philippines, we lived in bamboo houses, which was real nice. But Okinawa, we lived in tents, and which was okay.
Yeah. Any anything you missed or any cravings you had while you were over there that you missed from home? I know I always.
Well, you missed some of the. Got tired of that canned food all the time. Wish you could have something cooked.
Yeah.
But they did cook some. Yeah, we had regular meals, and if you didn't have to peel potatoes, that was okay. You got potatoes. It was good.
Yeah.
And worst, the worst time over there in Okinawa was when the cyclone hit.
I've heard about that.
It
Yeah.
wiped us out completely. There wasn't nothing left standing. Anything, no tents, no nothing.
Where did you guys seek shelter in that?
Well, the Japanese, I wouldn't do it. The Japanese had those burial
Mhm.
spots where they
Mhm.
go in. I wouldn't go to one of those things for nothing. Rats or anything else. There was enough other, of course, during the cyclone, it only lasted for an hour or a half hour, or whatever long it took.
Oh, okay.
Then you're okay. You either crawl back under your tent or stay out in the rain. So it didn't matter. The only bad part was there wasn't any food.
Oh, yeah.
So we didn't have, the mess hall was tore or ripped apart. There wasn't anything left. Nobody could cook, no food to cook anyway. So a bunch of us got a Jeep running. So we said, well, we knew this Navy had brought a supply ship in or anchored out there at sea, not too far away, and they had boats bringing them in. They were unloading supplies. So we got the Jeep, we went down there to the beach, and we never asked anybody. We just went up where all those supplies were and picked up 2 or 3 cases of supplies and headed back. It turned out to be mostly K rations, Army K ration stuff. We knew what was on it. I had all the, so we picked up several of those cases and went back in the Jeep and came back. No one said anything. They didn't stop us. And so they knew what had happened, so they didn't mind. Well, that's the only time we were short of any food or anything.
How long before conditions got back to normal as far as food and
probably,
shelters back up and going? And
well, the airstrip was okay. It didn't hurt. It didn't hurt any airplanes. Just, I suppose a week.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
We had our own tent back up. It ripped apart, but we got it prepared. We put our own tent back up. Thought we were smart, but we weren't. We knew the cyclone was coming. It warned us. So we used inch stacker rope, or hay rope, inch anchor rope, whatever it was, and we used 2x4s for tent stakes. We drove those in the ground the best you could, and we used those. Well, it was holding up in the cyclone pretty good, but then it looked like it was going to go down, so we decided to take it down or kick the props off from under it. Well, that was a mistake because they just ripped that tent to pieces then. We were out in the cyclone the whole time.
So you rode that cyclone out in the tent? Oh, jeez. Wow.
Trying to save our stuff, but we didn't save it. We got some stuff saved.
Wow.
But we shouldn't have taken it down. I think it would have held up. That much, we had ropes over the top of it and everything. I think it would have held up. But we got scared that it wasn't going to hold up, and so we thought we'd take it down.
I'll be done.
It was a great big tent. It was probably 12 people.
Oh, oh wow.
Yeah, it was a big long tent with 12 fellows in it or something like that. As long as the rats, they liked our tent too.
Oh, gee.
Oh, they loved it. We set up one night. We all got on one side of the tent, and it was dark. Each one of us had a flashlight, had our 45, and a flashlight. Pretty soon we could hear the rats come in. So we turned the flashlights on and blaze away at the rats.
Wow.
I don't know how many rats we hit. We probably never hit any of them.
Oh, boy.
Probably missed them all. But we had fun.
Well, outside of some rat hunting, what else would you guys do for entertainment when you were back on a mission and there at the?
Well, in Okinawa there wasn't much entertainment at all. Down then the USO would come in. We'd go down the flight line and see that. But out there where the tents were, there wasn't anything other than radios or listen radio or something like that. And that's about all you could do.
Picking up Tokyo Rose at all, or?
Oh yeah, you hear that every day.
Yeah.
Every day. And you'd watch, entertainment would be to watch Japanese ships fly overhead and see where our ack guns were. I don't know where they were stationed, but you could see them shooting at them. They never hit one, as far as I could see. They never hit one. They were flying so high. I don't even know where they were headed for.
You never came under any bombing from them?
Oh, they dropped a few bombs, but they didn't come close to us, so they missed us miles.
How about communications from back home, as far as letters from your sweetheart or your folks? Was that pretty reliable and consistent? And
well, depending on what you call well reliable. You did it by letters, and I think when Nancy, I was married then, and when Nancy would write me a letter, it would probably be a month before I'd get it. At least a month. So actually a lot of the letters she sent, the war was over before I ever got them.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
And I don't know how mail going back to her, it wasn't as bad. Going back to her, it wasn't, she'd get my letters pretty quick. Not real quick, probably a week or a week and a half. Where her letters to me would take at least a month, if not more.
Well, let's back up and let's tell that story now. You talked about meeting Nancy in college, and now you just mentioned you were married. Can you kind of tell us that little story of how you met and your courtship and all that?
Well, we met at the university. The first night at the university, they always have a mixer. That's get together or new it for all people. So I went to it, and she went to it. She went with a bunch of girls, and I probably went with a bunch of fellas too there. And everyone was dancing. I saw her standing over there with these girls, and I said, "Well, that's a cute little girl. I better go see if she wants to dance with me." So she did. She danced, and we had a good time. She was only 16, which is very young for a girl in college.
Yeah.
Anyway, she was good. And I said, "Well, can I walk you home?" She says, "No, you can't, unless you want to walk with all of us." So I probably walked with all of her. She lived in a dorm right across from where I did. And we dated off and on the rest of that fall before Pearl Harbor. And she'd go to different fellows, and I'd date different girls too. We just dated around and did that. And then when Pearl Harbor was, and I went, see, I didn't go until February 42. She went back home. I think, yeah, she went back home, and well, she came back to school the spring of 42 also, but then went back in the fall. And she taught school. And I went during all my training. And when I got to Colorado, that's where we got married, was in Colorado.
But you guys were obviously keeping in
yeah.
touch through.
All the time, yeah. She wrote and I wrote, and then I came back to Colorado, then we decided, well, let's get married. We're here. My home was in Wyoming, hers was in Wyoming. It says, here in Colorado. So we got married there just in July, and I got my wings in September. The pilot.
You come back to Wyoming to get married, or you get married down in La Junta, or yeah.
Got married in Pueblo.
In Pueblo. Okay.
At her aunt and uncle's house. My folks came down, and her folks didn't come. They couldn't come down, but their aunt and uncle was there. We got married there.
So you were only married a couple months before you shipped off then?
Yeah, well, married in July of 44, and we shipped out until April 45.
Oh, okay. All right. And did she stay down in Colorado with you there? Or?
Yeah, because she was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
So she stayed there. She could go home, but she decided to stay as long, because they knew I was going overseas. I was scheduled for it already. I already had orders that I was going overseas. And where I was going, I wouldn't tell you where you were going.
Yeah, right, right.
They weren't sure whether it was Pacific or European theater, but she knew I was headed there. So she stayed there, and the baby was born in May. I was in New Guinea at that time, and I didn't know about the baby being born for probably 2 months.
Wow.
After that.
And then
I know when the war was over, I was in Japan, and flew up there, and they said, if you want to stay a while, we'll give you a captain's rating in about 6 months. You can go up in rank. I said, no, I don't want to be a captain. I wanted to get home and see my daughter, which I hadn't seen yet at all. I wanted to go home and see her. So we did.
How long altogether before you actually? How old was your daughter? I guess before you finally saw her.
She was 9 months.
9 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, she was 9 months. Well, the question they're asking in the paper was how long after the war did I go home? It was 5.5 months. I was still in Japan before
So you guys went up as part of the occupation force then? Yeah.
Before we got to go home.
Well, let me ask you, backing up just a little bit here, do you remember where you were when you'd heard that we had dropped the atomic bomb? And
yeah, I was there in Okinawa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any concept of what this thing was when you first heard
about it? I didn't know what it was about, much other than it sure destroyed a lot of stuff. I figured, well, the war should be over now, because to me it was so close to being over anyway.
You guys were pretty aware that
yeah,
the end was near.
We were getting ready for the invasion. That's what we were practicing. That's why we went after shipping. It was more safer than going in on Japan Island itself. So we were practicing. We did that every other day or so, go in after shipping, just to practice before the invasion, because we all expected invasion. I mean, that's what we were told.
Yeah, yeah.
And we expected it.
Yeah.
And we didn't know anything about atomic bomb until they dropped it.
Right.
And then we didn't know, then the first one, see, they wouldn't surrender at all. And even after Nagasaki, they wouldn't surrender. So we didn't know what was really going on. But then I guess negotiations reached where they agreed that there's no use. Because they had lots of people there on the island that would have, they were well organized. The Japanese women and everything would have fought.
Well, we know that now. We know that they would have fought to the death. But were you guys were top brass passing that word on down to you guys that this thing was going to be a battle to the death if we did have to invade? I mean,
well, we knew it would be terrible. We knew they tell us that it'd be worse than any Iwo Jima or any of those Saipan or Apollo, any of those islands. It'd be a lot worse. Okinawa, the Philippines, wouldn't be close to what those were like at all. Because by seeing the shoreline of Japan, it's pretty rough. Just like England, high cliffs. Of course, it wasn't all that way, and I don't know where they would have made their landing, but it had been at the south end of Japan. It had to be at the south end. Or maybe it had been up Tokyo, I don't know.
so your role, once again, like in previous missions, would have been to soften things up before the invasion. Is that primarily what you guys would have?
Yeah, we're mostly get rid of some of their ships.
Oh, okay.
Get rid of some of that so there wouldn't be our landing wouldn't be like the one from England. So maybe get in closer, wouldn't have so much interference there. And basically it was mostly practice to get in because they know we'd go into inland and start factories and stuff that were still there. I don't think there was many factories left, but I don't know.
Yeah.
At that time, you didn't have any idea.
Right.
You're bound to have had factories somewhere, building everything, but I don't know.
So I imagine, was there quite a celebration there in Okinawa on VJ Day when word was finally
Yeah,
announced?
as far as I know, because our group was so small, though, we just had a route out there at the flight line. Yeah, there wasn't a celebration like there was other places at all. There wasn't that many people there, and I suppose all were excited about it, and that it did happen. And we all waited for the surrender. I don't remember what ship it was.
Missouri.
Missouri? One of the fellows over here was on the Missouri.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. I met him yesterday at the flight out there at the airport.
Oh, did you go out on Sunday?
Yeah.
Oh, very good. So how about personally though? How did you feel when it was over? That boy, I survived this thing. I made it through.
It was over, and I go home. I didn't have any rough flying troubles.
But potentially
Or
you
anything.
would have, I think, had the invasion gone through.
Yeah,
things would have got
rough
rougher.
there.
Yeah. So after the surrender, then you guys moved up as part of the occupation force.
Well, not right away. We stayed in Okinawa for part of the time. Went up there in January to Japan and didn't do anything really at all. I don't know what we were there for, actually.
Were you able to get out and about at all and
Yeah, a
sightsee?
little bit. We
Yeah.
got out, yeah.
Any encounters with the locals?
Local. We stayed in some kind of a barracks-like thing, and we had maids and everything there. We didn't have to do anything. We had maids to come clean up, cook for us, and everything. So we had life pretty easy. But we didn't do anything. We rode around in jeeps. I don't know what we were patrolling, I suppose. That's about all we did. I don't.
So not much flying at that point.
Wasn't any flying. In Japan, I didn't do any flying at all. After I left Okinawa, I was through flying.
And then when did you finally, after they gave you the offer of a captain, you turned it down? When did you finally start journey back home? Then how?
In February.
February.
Yeah.
And
Came back.
what was that homecoming like? Senior-
Nancy met me. I came into, I guess, San Francisco. That's where we came in. And then we took a train to Cheyenne, or somehow we got through Utah and then to Cheyenne. And Nancy met me at Cheyenne there. She didn't have the baby with her. She left the baby home. So I didn't get to see it for another 2 or 3 days. We have a very cute picture in my book here. I was holding Janet. Daughter's name was Janet. I was holding Janet, but she had her arms around her mother.
Had no idea who you were.
No business for him. Who's this guy? I don't want anything to do with him. So she had, but It's got a rather cute picture.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
holding her, but she was all stretched out with her arms around her mother. She wrote that and said, she knows who she loves.
Yeah. But it must have been a great feeling to be back home and
Oh, it
with
was,
them.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. And then what? Just give us a little idea of your family or your time after the war. Did you return and finish college, or?
You know, I came back, went to university. Both of us did. She went to school too for a while, but she couldn't keep up with it. I mean, for me going to school and her taking care of the kids,
Sure.
trying to earn enough money to live on.
Right.
She would cook for the other students. As many as 5 students in our little trailer that she'd cook for.
Huh.
So, because she was a good cook, she went for ranch. She was an excellent cook. So she did that, and she'd go to school too, but she didn't take very many classes.
Yeah, right.
She didn't graduate until '61. But so I graduated then in '48.
What did you get your degree in?
Electrical engineering.
Mhm.
And by that time we had another child, a boy, and we went back east to General Electric Corporation. Worked for General Electric's, the General Electric company there in Schenectady, New York. Worked for them there, and then I transferred to Indiana with General Electric Supply Corporation, and worked there for several years. But we wanted to come back west.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
We wanted to come west. So we quit the job there and came back out here. My folks were living in Denver at that time. And we stopped and saw them, and I went in and talked to the public service company. And I got hired then, and I went down to Alamosa, Colorado for my first job. And just worked my way up through the next 30 years.
Long career then with public service. That you finished out your career then with public service.
You know, before it was even Excel.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Still public service company when I retired. They hadn't even bought the other company first, or the other company hadn't bought the company out, and Excel hadn't bought that company out yet. So that was afterwards.
Hmm.
But
So, how long then were you said Nancy passed last year? How long? How many years were you guys married?
63.
63 years. Wow. And Janet and a son, or any other children after?
We got another boy, Doug, born in Indiana when we were working there, and then we adopted 3 children in '69. Yeah, 60. Yeah, 69 and 70. We adopted 3, 2 boys and a girl, and the one boy was killed in a car accident.
Hmm.
So we lost him, and then our daughter lives out in Washington. She's married, lives out in Washington. And I got a boy, Steve, who lived in Phoenix.
How many grandchildren and great-grandchildren?
Oh, I don't know.
No,
I can't count that.
Can't count me.
I think we have 7 grandchildren and a lot more greats.
Okay.
I got a great now.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, David, we could start to wind down this interview. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to talk about, or any stories you can think of that we didn't cover, that so we can round out?
A couple of stories I didn't tell you about. Nothing unusual other than in Colorado here. We had to do night flying too, learn to fly, because we didn't know where we'd be stationed.
Mm-hmm.
Overseas, we knew we didn't need any night flying, but that we didn't know where we'd be going. So, so I was flying here one night here at Wahanta, and anyway, then flying here one night, it had one engine freeze up on us, and so it was okay. We feathered the thing like you're supposed to, and it flies pretty good on one engine. It won't. It doesn't glide. It's a short wingspan compared to other planes, so it doesn't have a gliding effect to speak of at all. So if you lost both engines, you better find a place to land, or you haven't got time.
Oh, jeez.
But it wouldn't start for quite a while. We got back to the base, And it finally started as we were getting ready to make our pattern. We got it started. So we had a good landing. It was okay. We got that through with. That's what I say. The Lord's with me all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And then overseas was the worst thing. That after the war was over, I still like to fly. So I didn't. A lot of fellows quit flying. They were through. They weren't going to fly anymore. But I still wanted to fly. So one day they asked me if I would take a couple nurses and a colonel up to Korea, to Seoul. I said, sure. So we flew over Hiroshima and Nagasaki for them to look at.
Wow.
And then went on up to Seoul, Korea. And both of us said, hey, we haven't been here before. Let's radio back and say, we can't get any gas tonight. We've got to wait till tomorrow to get gas. Well, that was our first mistake. Anyway, we stayed. We stayed all night. We got go in town and see Seoul a little bit. Traveled and came back out the next day to see about getting gas and said, we haven't got any. We can't give you any gas, and we're told we have any left. So they said, well, what are we going to do? And they said, well, you can go to Japan and get some there at Kyushu. So we said, okay, we had no choice. So we took off for Kyushu, Japan. And it was raining down there so bad they wouldn't let us land. It says, the weather's too bad, you can't land here. We don't have instruments. You can't instrument fly because they didn't have any instruments on the runway to do that. So we said, well, we'll go back to Korea. No, you can't. It's raining here. You can't land here. So we had nowhere to land except in the ocean. So we said, well, okay, let's head back towards Okinawa, go as far as we can. And we had an excellent navigator. Our navigator was with us, one that was on our crew. And he was a good navigator when he wasn't drunk. He was excellent. Anyway, he hit us right for Okinawa. So I knew we got out of the rain, the clouds, and beautiful flying weather. But we kept thinking, well, what are we going to do here? We got to land this thing in the water. It wasn't nice weather. It'd be nice weather to land in. But you don't land in water. Your wheels don't work.
Yeah.
So, but I asked him, I was flying co-pilot again, and I asked him, said, did you check the Bombay's tanks? Oh, he said, they emptied all the Bombay tanks before as soon as the war was over, they drained all those because it's dangerous to have them. So they drained them all. I said, did you check them? He said, no, well, let's check them. So he did, so all I can say is the Lord must have filled them.
Wow.
Because there was enough gas in the tanks to get us back to Okinawa.
Wow.
So that was kind of an exciting experience. We didn't want to land in the water.
Yeah.
I don't know how we could have done it. I don't know. B-25s don't land in water very well because they're too heavy, too short a wingspan. They don't float at all. They sink.
Do you think you would have had enough time to get out of the plane if you had?
Oh, I think so. At least I hope it's been how well we landed. If you do like the fellow did in Boston, tail first, probably been all right. We never practiced landing tail, but we talked about it. You have to land tail first on those planes if you're going to land in the water. So otherwise the plane just rip itself apart as soon as you hit it. 'Cause those engines were huge. Our engines were big and heavy, and there wasn't much room. So if you let the engine hit the water first, you'd roll it.
Right, right.
So you
Wow.
had to get your tail for it, but we didn't have to do it, so didn't worry about it.
Wow. What was the sights like as you flew that colonel over Nagasaki and Hiroshima? You remember?
Oh, it was devastating. I couldn't believe it really that there was nothing there. It was all destroyed, just completely destroyed, just all barren. Oh, lots of rubble, of course, all terrible debris. Buildings all the way, just nothing. It was just completely destroyed.
Wow, wow.
There's a few buildings standing, ones that were built out of concrete and brick, I guess. We didn't see many, but I didn't get any pictures of it. I wish I could have had pictures of it. We were flying, so I didn't get any pictures of it.
Wow. What a view. I mean, you had probably one of the best views of those areas from that cockpit.
Yeah, we flew over a couple times around it just to let them see too what it was like, and for us to see it. Never been there before.
I'll be darned.
So we flew both of them.
Huh. How was in relation to the question I asked you in the first part of the interview? How was your transition from military life to civilian life? Was it much of a...
Not much of a change, really. I mean, it was different because I had probably changed a lot myself.
Yeah.
I wasn't a feisty young kid I thought I was. I figured I was the hottest pilot there was. So I had changed some. Yeah, I had changed.
How, through the years, did you keep in touch with your crews? Did you ever have any sort of reunions?
We had one reunion in Texas with the crew, probably about 6 years after the war. It was a wonderful reunion. All of them came there. It was a nice reunion there at the pilot's place. His folks were lawyers, and they had a place out in the bayou, wherever it was, in Louisiana there, and they had servants galore.
Wow.
Servants, all black, lots of servants. And we got there. I know the kids, they weren't used to seeing too many black people.
Sure,
they just
right.
wasn't used to it.
Right, right.
But boy, they took them fishing. They baited the kids' hooks for them and did everything for them. I don't know if they called it fishing or not, but they were sure good to them. They just took them, and the kids really took to them. They thought it was wonderful. They didn't mind them being black or white. Didn't bother them a bit. They were so well treated, they couldn't believe it.
So that was just the one time, no formal like 405 type reunions?
We kept contact through yearly Christmas letters. I know that. We did that for probably about 10 years, and then they drifted off to different places. I know the radio man, last time I heard from him, he was a captain. He was just I don't think he was even a sergeant when he was flying with us. He might have been. But he stayed in the service, and he got to be a captain. And he may have gone a lot higher than that, for all I know.
Yeah. Did you have any desire to continue flying after you got out of the service? Did you?
Oh, I'd like to. I would love to fly, but Nancy didn't want me to fly.
Is that right?
So I didn't mind.
Yeah.
It was okay. Yeah. I got my multi-engine flying license, so I could fly anything multi-engine. But I never did pursue it or anything.
Well, one final question I always like to ask to tie off the interview is, how do you think that period of your life, you've talked a little bit about it, changed your life, affected your life, played a role in your life, or was it just simply a chapter in your life that you went through? How do you feel about that?
I would say it didn't change much, really. I'd say it's more just like a chapter. It happened, and I served the country, of which we were all doing that, or not everyone, but most of us were. And it was an experience and a chapter in life that took place.
Okay.
As far as anything else, I don't think it affected me really one way or another.
Okay.
I never joined any veteran services or anything like that.
Yeah.
Probably could have or should have, I don't know, I never did though.
Well, is there any statement you'd like to make to friends and family that will watch this to cap off this interview, or not? Is there?
No, I don't know of any that I would say. I mean,
okay.
What to say about that, really? I'm just thankful that I'm here. My kids are here. And, enjoyed my life.
Very good. Well, David, I want to thank you for sitting down to tell your story today, but more importantly, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you.